Maybe I can get rid of the headers there. Let's see. Reading. Yeah, that's not too bad, huh?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And I can still see you and the poster, but I may be looking off to the other screens. Okay, so I'm not going to say much about it until I hear what your questions are. But obviously, there's 3 panels.
Yeah.
By the way, I did this poster in 3 days.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can imagine that. The reason why I say I can imagine that is because you've got a massive amount of reference material. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can understand how you can pull this together really quickly. I don't think I don't think the fact that you pulled it together in just a few days distracts from the quality of what you've got here. Yeah, I think you've got some amazing stuff here.
Well, it all fits together,
Yes.
and the thing is, the reason it was quick wasn't because it was cursory.
I know.
It was because I said, well, what have I done?
Yeah.
And so it was like I just stepped back and wanted to give a whole view of all aspects of, because
Yeah.
the problem is that with a holistic theory, any part of it can be critiqued to death. And then when you do that, you never get to the whole, because you're always trying to understand each piece. And we're so used to thinking that when we understand the pieces, we'll understand the whole, but that's not true.
Yeah.
So like in the in the Upanishads and the Vedas, I realized that they never define anything, and these are supposedly these incredible, deepest spiritual texts that we have. Why don't they ever just come out and define something? What are you talking about? Well, because you can't when you're talking about something whole. Definitions are very particular. And so what they do is they give endless repetitive examples. So you have the same concept repeated, in this way, and then almost the exact words that one word changed, and then another repetition with another word changed. And so they're trying to sort of imply the whole by showing how many ways it manifests. So that's kind of what this is. It's like, okay, there's 9 sections here. Each one is showing there's only one concept for the entire poster, and that's the whole one. So anyway, so that's kind of the idea. So very quickly on the left panel, of course, I start with the modeling relation. And this is what Judith really focuses on. I think her understanding gets as far as the modeling relation, and it doesn't go much beyond that. And anticipatory systems, but they're kind of the same because the modeling relation is anticipatory, the way Rosen put it together. And, and you can obviously see the analogy with Escher and the idea that this thing can't exist in our current scientific world. You can't have a closed loop of causation in a mechanism. It's logically impossible. So then the only way you can get it to work is to have something undefined, which is the relations, the encoding and decoding. We've had long discussions about formalizing things on the consciousness discussion list. And you can formalize everything in our mechanical concept of a natural system. And you can formalize things even in a formal system that represents it, like a model. In mind or body, if you want to think of it that way, if we think of the body as purely physical, we can formalize descriptions of it, and we can even formalize descriptions of mental processes. They can't be combined. They're different logics. But what we can't formalize is the relation. Logically, you're going to have non-computable functions, and that's what really, bugs people, and they spend huge amounts of effort trying to figure out how to formalize something that can't be formalized. So anyway, then you go here, and this was a concept that came out in the paper I did with Carol Westman, the 2 papers for Gary's book. And it was before that, but I emphasized it there, that complexity is the foundation. You know, our usual concept is that we have a material basis for reality. It complexifies, and then some more magic happens, and then you get life. But you can't do that. You can't, if it's not already in the system, then if you try to add it later, whether the theory actually says it or not, you're invoking something from outside, you know, like an external God or something, or an external emergence, you know. So I don't believe in emergence. It's there from the beginning. Well, if you start with complexity, then nature already has everything it needs to make machines and to make life. They're just 2 different ways of doing it. If you take the complex system and do a whole lot of interaction, you know, everything interacting with everything else in the same context,
Yeah.
you're going to reduce it to a mechanism.
Yeah.
And if we slow down the interactions or speed up the observations, we're going to look between the decoherence processes, and we're going to see complexity. And then if that complexity gets internalized into a closed loop relation, which this can't do without non-local contexts, but if it gets internalized and self-sustaining, then we get life. So we can build up the life, and it's kind of a threshold, you know, there's complexity, has everything in it, has the final formal causality in it, but nowhere near to the degree that we get once we close the loop. And then you can really go crazy with it. Like you get humans, craziest thing ever invented.
That wasn't me.
Right. So anyway, so does that make sense so far?
Again, you know, language, John. Yeah.
Language,
So
yeah.
you're using language, and you know, that I'm not familiar with. So I'm just accepting it. Yeah. But
pick some words. What language is not familiar?
Nearly every word you said.
I think I used it a few times. We should know.
It's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, modeling relation, does that make sense? The word
modeling relation, that's okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So you make a model of what's out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can perhaps come in,
yeah.
This whole what I see on that Rosen diagram is not a closed causal loop necessarily. And that to me was kind of strange that you described it as a closed causal loop. So you can just perhaps elaborate on that.
Okay.
Just, Gary, have a look in the chat.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, okay, so let me see if I can, oops, no. All I did was click on it. Back.
Yeah. So
let's zoom in a bit.
Yeah.
And see if we can look at why it's.
Yeah.
So you see.
Yeah.
Well, this is obviously a closed loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And it's a closed causal loop because this hand causes that one. And that hand causes this one.
Yeah. Yeah. So so I think I agree with you. It is a closed loop. Yeah. Causal loop.
So what are you thinking, Roland? Why wouldn't that qualify as
I'm not talking talking about the one on the hand. I'm talking about the next to the greenish one.
Well, you can see the arrows close.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
isn't like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is one hand
So
and this is the other hand.
yeah. Yeah. So the
Yes,
part-
but
yeah.
I think about it in the Peter Checkland sense.
You know what?
Peter, in the same sense as Peter Checkland. Peter Checkland says that you use a model in a different kind of a dimension to describe the natural system. So you step back in a different dimension, in a conceptual dimension, and you look at the world and you model it. And he has a diagram fairly similar to that one of the soft systems methodology. So what I see when I'm not knowledgeable on Robert Rosen's work, but what I see, and that's why I'm saying this, because it's just a different perspective. I see a diagram that says there's an observer looking at a natural system, making sense of that natural system by creating a formal model of that system in his mind and interacting with a natural system to improve their formal model in their mind. And
Yes.
to me, that's not a cause and effect loop. It is just a way of looking at the world. And I think the fact that there's an I and the observer in there drives me to my understanding of it. It's not the natural system causing a formal model, causing or resulting in a formal model. The formal model is a way of making sense of the natural system by just looking at it.
Understood.
That's what I
However-
see. That's why I say I can't see the
However-
cause.
I get it. No,
However-
I get it, Rob.
However, without that stimulation, we would not constantly be forming mental models of the world and the universe around us. Yeah. So there is a cause. Yeah. The world is the cause. The universe is the cause.
Of the model. Well. Okay. Yeah. And
let me make one more errand here and grab my pen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Gary, I'm going to run because I can't get myself to concentrate, and then I'm going to keep on asking silly questions.
Not a problem.
So I'm off. I will just say bye to John. Your recording of this is not going well.
It is going well. It's going great.
Right. Okay. So that's great, Rob, because yeah, you're 100% correct in my opinion.
Yes.
Okay. However,
John, on my clever note, I'm going to love you and leave you because simply I have too many things to do and too little time. And so I'm extremely sorry that I'm not participating in this any longer. Please know that this is not my normal style. I just have too many.
No, so the only thing I'll say then to your comment is that yes, but both are true, and I can show why both ideas are true.
Yeah. Well, nothing is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Take care.
Yeah. Yeah. So the interesting thing about this diagram, this particular diagram you're showing at the moment, is that nature does this too. Yeah. Everything in the universe does this too. And it's not, you don't need a mind and a body. Yeah. There's the conceptual, I don't know. There's the physical, there's the purely physical stuff, which we can see in terms of forces and matter and energy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there's also the conceptual side, which is, you know, the data, the information that is exchanged, the knowledge that is built up. Yeah. In the very fabric of the universe.
Right.
Yeah? So and we can only, I don't know, we can postulate that stuff because we can see it embodied in the physicality of the universe, and we've created theories of, you know, data and information and knowledge, which then become what we see as the physical reality.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm coming from, John? Yeah.
I do. I do.
Of
How
course
are
you
you?
do.
Where do you sit with Roland's question? How does Roland's question? What's your view of that?
Well, I think it is there. You know, the four causes are at work there. Yeah, definitely in
Is
everything.
it clear to you why though?
Yeah, well, it's clear. It's clear to me because I've been able to relate it to the physics. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, because when I relate it to the physics, this simply becomes natural law.
it is. Yeah, everything there is natural.
So what I'm doing is I'm saying that our ability to think and build models is no different than nature's uh,
Yeah, yeah,
natural laws.
yeah.
Because
Even atoms do it.
I can't take a natural law and
Yeah,
put it into a jar and label it and put it on the
yeah,
shelf.
yeah,
You know, it's abstract.
yeah.
So there's a leap of faith there where we say, okay, our ability to conceptualize and build models is a further elaboration, extension of nature's
Yes, yes,
implicit.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's just that our level of complexity
yeah,
allows us to do that. It's providing
right. And then
capability
the
for us
other
to do it.
aspect of that is that it's that nature's ability isn't purely law-like because it's essentially modeling its own ability to
Yes,
model. And that's what
yes,
we're doing, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. We
No,
are the
I
universe
just
trying to understand itself.
so as far as Roland's question, what she was referring to is what Rosen originally presented the model to
Yeah,
do.
yes,
And I just reversed this arrow
yeah, yeah.
here because that's what mathematicians do. If you talk to Aloysius Louis,
Okay,
and if you look in Rosen's books,
yeah,
this is the way it's presented.
okay, okay.
And what they're doing here is they're saying this observer is no longer in the middle
Yeah,
where I have it. This observer, oops, I'm not going to foul all this up. This
yeah,
observer is here.
yes, yes. In that model, yes, I agree. Yeah,
And from that perspective, there's another relation involved when we build our
well,
scientific model
yeah,
and then we decode it into a prediction that's someplace else.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then we compare that prediction with nature with another process.
yeah,
So that's what this is implying
yeah.
is that it's a comparative operation.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But
the fun thing is that yeah, if we say that the human is on the right hand side and observing, you know, a natural system, the
yeah,
natural system is also doing that with the person. Yeah,
yeah.
and
See,
that's why, you know,
yeah,
the act of observing has an effect on the observer and the observed.
yeah. But so then I've flipped this around to say, well, wait a minute. Maybe you know our ability to make that comparison with our own predictions is just another modeling relation.
Mm,
And in fact, you can show that it is.
yeah,
So it turns out that this ends up being more fundamental. And when you go here, the observer isn't just looking at something,
yeah,
the observer is the relation.
yes, yeah. Yeah,
And
no,
that
I'm
could
with
get
that.
pretty hairy for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm trying to do is trying to bridge that conceptual divide between the model and people's general understanding. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you do that really well in your um, you know, in the video you did. Um, I can't remember the particular title of it now, but the one that you used
It's
in
something about
the blog.
post-truth. Yeah.
Yeah, the post truth. You know, the very simple explanation you gave of the builder and the building, I
Yeah.
thought was spot on. I think a lot of people
Good, good,
understand
good,
that.
good. I was trying to communicate, you know, and
Yeah,
I just really at the time and now too, I really felt that oh God, we're in such a dire situation with this whole,
mm,
you know, political and social.
yeah,
I sent that video to Gutierrez at the UN and to Biden never got any response from any of them.
No, because they also wouldn't understand the implications, I don't think.
But see, hopefully, if they're good people, they would say, "Oh, this is weird. It came from a professor who's doing research.
Yes.
Send this to my science advisor, and and see if he can figure it out." And I mean, they ought to get the point that there is a perfect storm brewing that could be very dangerous, and I've seen their statements and their actions on this, and I have some confidence that they're getting it. No, not from my presentation necessarily. I mean, I've just thrown it away, but I'm seeing evidence that this kind of thinking is emerging.
Yeah, and I think again that's part of the natural process. I do think that a new level of consciousness in our culture is emerging naturally. Yeah. Because it's just having to. Because if it doesn't, it's not going to be able to deal with the, it's not going to be able to deal with the problems we're facing at the moment. A new level of consciousness is required.
Right.
Yeah.
But our old habits are just so much in the way that as soon as someone gets the insight, then immediately they start to unravel it with the wrong thinking.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't know if I can ever convince Roland, but what she's saying is true.
Yeah. So,
but it's a special case of this.
Yeah. So Roland's seeing it from a critical systems thinking, soft systems methodology, paradigm. So when she sees that diagram, she sees it in a particular context, which is allowing her to make that conceptual jump.
If we only think in terms of what we do, then we want the other diagram that the mathematicians are using, because we are the ones who conceptualize. We are the ones who model. But this gets rid of us as a special entity. We're just kind of more of the same.
But when you accept that, you can start to apply system science as a foundation for social science, and for psychology, and all of that other good stuff.
All right. So anyway, we got a big poster. So let's go on. So then I go to, okay, so what? Well, if this is what's really going on, if this is at the bottom of our ability to model, and it's at the bottom of what appears to be some kind of order in nature itself. Now, here's the order, and here's what we see. And our ability to see that is because we're in fact created by that order ourselves. Okay, then our concept of nature as building up from things won't work. And so this is trying to emphasize that the complex is the foundation. So I even said here, not the foundation, because everybody thinks that is.
No, the thing for me is even those apparently mechanical things, they're still systems, and they have a level of complexity. Complexity is everywhere, at every level of system abstraction. It's just to what degree.
That's right. Well, and so when you reduce a system to a machine, the degree of complexity is really hidden from your analysis. I mean, obviously, if you zoom in and look at the individual atoms and farther down, you're going to get, quantum complexities. So it's there, but it's just not. It's been reduced in the system you're interacting with. And the reason it's reduced is because everything is in the same context. The interactions, observations are all participating in the same law-like context. And what organisms do is they internalize and isolate context. So then you can have different contextual meanings. And then you can build up the complexity, and eventually have consciousness and thinking.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
things like that, where you're manipulating that complexity and you're employing it.
Yeah.
So that's the idea there. And so the mechanical, I try to show that as, okay, here's nature, and we've reduced the context to immutable general laws. And that's classical mechanics. They know that that's not true, of course, after the quantum discoveries. But instead of going to a complex foundation, I mean, I think some physicists are certainly trying to, but there's a holdover to, the stuff at the bottom.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that we say, okay, we're going to stick with the mechanical view, and we're going to explain why that's not entirely true by adding the concept of uncertainty or error. And you notice I don't have uncertainty in here. There is no uncertainty. There's complexity. And so, and so what I'm saying is, no, uncertainty is just a heuristic that we've added in order to keep our mechanical view and lump everything else, including life and consciousness, into uncertainty. And then we're uncertain about what life is and what consciousness is. And there's really no surprise there, because we've called it uncertain and not looked any deeper. So in Rosen's terminology, he talks about impredicativity. Anything that happens in a mechanical system is predicated on the general laws. And if you have internalized different laws, different contexts, then it's no longer predicated on its ambient environment.
Yeah.
So impredicativity means it's not fully predicated on one context.
Yeah, even that mechanical, even that mechanical certainty is really uncertain. You change the context of an individual system. You take a system out of one context and put it into another. It's not the same system anymore, and you may get different behavior. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You like the Clint Eastwood picture here?
Yes.
Do you get it?
Yeah, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
I can't help throwing in something.
No, it's good. I like it. Yeah. So the other one I use quite often is Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude that's the problem. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
So then the other thing that's suggested here, it said these are final relations and formal relations.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with that, and I understand influences, attractors, mechanisms, and exchanges. Yeah.
And this is where you can build out to a holarchy, because if there was just one context, you would have a machine. But the nature of the inductive side is that it's not non-unique. This is the material world.
Yeah.
And it's based on uniqueness.
Yeah.
Two things can't occupy the same place at the same time. You have discrete objects, and everything we do here is our mathematics for describing it as discrete mathematics.
Yeah.
So you have 1 + 1 = 2, because you have one separate thing plus one separate thing, therefore equals 2 separate things. But if they aren't separate, 1 + 1 = 3, because they interact, they overlap.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have A, B, and A union B.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's what's going on here. So this is, by its fundamental nature, this builds out into a holarchy. There's no end to the number of external contexts that could be involved. Now, at first glance, someone would say, well, okay, that destroys the whole analysis. We can throw it away because you have an infinite regress.
Yeah, yeah,
An infinite
yeah.
regress in mathematics is the kiss of death.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless,
yeah,
unless it converges.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
like a Taylor series is an infinite regress.
yeah. So
But the nearer terms are more significant.
yeah,
You have something very much like that here.
yeah.
It turns out that the nearby terms are more significant than the relations far away. Why? Why would that be? What principle could we come up with to explain why the proximal relations would be more important than the distant relations, like a butterfly effect? Here's a butterfly in China,
yeah,
and it changes the weather in Ohio.
yeah, yeah.
Why is that not true when you have a whole closed system? Do you have an answer to that?
Well, for me, if you use the one plus one analogy, yeah, you're forgetting that there's another aspect to that equation, which is the environment. 1 + 1 plus the environment is more than 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And Bogdanov talks about this in his technology. Yeah, when he talks about his definition of system, his definition of system incorporates that interrelationship, that coupling with the environment. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, exactly. It's a coupling with the environment, but it's also a coupling with the internalized environments.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
internalized models.
Yes.
And the simple principle that explains why it's a convergent series is sustainability. Because once you close the loop, this becomes a self-sustaining entity, which is why organisms
because there's that constant sensing of wholeness in the context of its environment, and that continually provides those influences draw on attractors that keep the system whole.
That's it. That's it. And now these extend out infinitely too, but these are mechanical interactions.
Yes.
And so we think of them differently. We label them differently.
Yeah.
When this interacts with another system, we call it a different system.
Mm.
But when these build out to other contexts, we can't distinguish it.
Yes.
All we know is that this identity, Gary or John, has a whole lot of complex definitions going on, all the way up to the universe. I mean, we might be into God, and that, where does that come from? Well, that's this infinite regress. So here's the thing. This is, if it's self-sustaining and you have a chain of relations in the holarchy, then each link in the chain will act as like a filter. Because if something happens here, it has to be compatible with this system in order for it to not be removed by the sustainability of that system. And then it can be transmitted to the next, and then the next. So you have to have some sort of harmony across the chain in order for an effect to get through.
Yeah.
And since, they're self-sustaining, if there isn't some even larger context enforcing that harmony, if they don't all in some way agree with each other, the signal's not going to get through. So the problem is, I can say that it's theoretically convergent in general. For the most part, the nearby contexts are going to be the more significant ones, but we can't eliminate the black swan that gets through. Or in the case, say, like a nuclear reaction, we create a particular environment that forces compatibility along the chain, and then you can get a nuclear chain reaction. The signal gets through. So it's that kind of thinking. But it's frustrating for people because they say, well, I mean, can I is it just the proximal relations? If I include one or two levels out, have I described the system?
Yeah.
Can I be confident that I can predict the future? No,
Yeah.
because there can always be the surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. So in systems engineering, there's a heuristic. It was described by Kevin Forsberg to me. You know, a good systems engineer thinks one level up and two levels down.
Yeah.
And that's the level that they need in order to ensure that the system that they're creating is going to be fit for purpose, yeah, and sustainable, and all of those other things.
Yeah.
You know, if you expand your thinking out too far, you're thinking in an area that, you know, you just can't touch. Yeah, there's no need for you to go out that far. Yeah,
Well, you have to keep your model open. I mean, your thinking open, so that you say, okay, you know, I'm not making a hard prediction that must come true here. I'm making a forecast.
yeah,
And you know, we have to keep watching, because the only way we know about these longer chains, possible black swans or butterfly effects,
yeah.
is
I have to
empirically.
go in about 10 minutes, John. So
Okay.
maybe we could
All right.
finish.
So I mean, we covered a huge amount of ground here. If people really just understood that much, we've gone all the way to holarchy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now here I try to be a little bit more communicating here to say, okay, what's the difference in worldview?
Yeah.
If we think of this as dynamical system, and we see a complex reality, you know, we're looking at a relational analysis, and therefore we see everything as complex. We can work on these holistic explanations like we were just talking.
Yeah. I'm with that.
But the usual way of looking at things is that we have mechanisms, and then complex reality comes in as a sort of a sum of mechanisms. And we're still doing mechanistic approximations. And so our mechanisms don't add up.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we're not representing the context. We're not looking at the contextual aspect of it. So we don't get a holistic view. Even though this isn't exact, we get an exact view that isn't complete. So then they go, gee, why did my model not work? Like in cosmology, it's been patched like 10, 12 times. You know, each time is a revolution. They go, oh, yeah, we just missed something. There's dark energy. We'll have to add that. You know, oh, gosh, there's inflation. We'll have to add that. And it's a ad hoc fix to the fact that mechanisms can never add up to nature.
Yes.
And I go, why didn't it work? Well, you know, here's the modern paradigm. Shut up and calculate. We're not even going to talk about what it means. And then I get the quotes from Da Vinci and Aristotle, which give us a more awesome, wondrous sort of science where there's a whole lot to explore.
Yeah.
And we're a little more aware of the unknowns, you know?
Yeah.
So real quick then, I think, you know, everything else pretty much falls from it. But then we go into Rosen's MR system. You're familiar with that already.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
And he described this as a closed loop of efficient cause, because you have repair, reproduction, metabolism, producing, repair, reproduction, and metabolism. Well, Rosen only did that triangle thing. He didn't do this stuff. I added that because he was only looking at what would, as an absolute minimum criteria, tell us what's different about a living system from a mechanical system.
Yeah.
And inside the organism, this is what's going on. And this is what can't be explained mechanically. He said so in his books.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, this triangle is like this one.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make sense in a calculable mechanical world.
Yeah.
It implies something else going on at each one of the nodes. And that something else is context. So you have context, context, context. These are the embedded contexts in the system. And of course, you can't have an organism without an environment. But Rosen didn't want to consider the whole thing because he wanted to deal with the case where you have a living system that can't reproduce and isn't evolving, so replication is not reproduction. It's creating a genetic code that can be used for repair.
Yeah.
So you can have a mule that sterile. And so if he required, the phenotype and genotype, he wouldn't be able to get that definition. But in fact, the mule also has these relations because it came from something. It didn't just spontaneously generate. And once I mapped it out, I said, well, this has 4 arrows. This has 4 arrows. So these are completely entailed. These aren't. These only had 2 in Rosen's diagram.
Yeah.
But they're completely entailed when you include the environment. Then you get phenotype and genotype. Yeah. But we still have hidden, all the contexts are hidden here.
Yeah. The one thing that model doesn't incorporate, well, there may be others, but one that I can think of is learning. Yeah.
The what?
Learning.
Yeah.
Because if you take into account, for instance, the adaptive immune system, cells do have an ability to learn, and to change their behavior, right, based on what they know.
Right. Yeah. So, where is that knowledge? It's here. This FS is function structure. So there's what's happening here is and what Rosen talked about in essays is that Schrodinger's question was, we know in physics how a function causes a state transition. Yeah. So functions produce states.
Yes.
But we have nothing in physics that tells us how a state turns into a function. So once we produce phi here, the code, somehow the code then exerts a function on something else. Well, how does a state become a function? Our mathematics is all built around functions operating on states.
Yeah.
And that's done in the R-Holon theory by context, because the state is like, you take a chair and you stick it in the intertidal zone. It's a thing, and it's placed in a complex context, and the thing doesn't produce the function, the context does.
Yes.
And so in that context, that chair takes on a new function as a hiding place for fish, or a attachment surface for barnacles.
Yeah.
So the key insight is that, well, the state doesn't become a function. It impregnates a context, which then produces a function. That means that there can be a hell of a lot of variability in the context. And then you're out here to an infinite series of contextual relations could be infecting this connection. Yeah. So that's what I try to show here. Yeah. I build it out and I say, well, okay, we have how a function explains states, and then this is how a state then becomes a function as a result of context.
Yeah.
And the key thing, insight to building the R-Holon model, was to say, okay, in the most simplistic, parsimonious way imaginable, we have these 4 components of a system, which he labeled F and A and B and phi. Well, if we started with a system that included nothing but those components, we wouldn't have metabolism, because each component is a self-sustaining whole. The function in F simply explains why we have F. The function in A explains why we have A. It doesn't explain an additional function that it can exert in addition to being self-sustaining as its own component. it does something else when in the combination. How does it generate a new function? Well, if functions are generated by context, then all we have to do is modify the context. And the simplest way to modify the context is to imagine a combination of contexts. So if phi and A create a combined context, we get a new function. And so we can still have phi and A keeping those components alive or real, but then the phi A combination allows us to have something new. And so that explains where we get repair, metabolism, and replication without invoking more stuff than the system already has in it. So that's the most parsimonious thing the system can do to self-organize.
So each of those squares is an instantiation of the Holon.
Yeah, and then these are the possible combinations.
Yeah.
And since each Holon has both phenotype and genotype,
yeah,
it has to have at least two combinations. So you get a phi BAF possibility.
Yeah.
You get a phi A. What's the other one? You know.
Okay.
BF.
John, I'm gonna have to
okay,
go.
but that gives
you've
you the
blown my brain now.
Okay, all right, but it's simple combinatorics at that point. You have these possibilities, pair them. How many pairs are there? There are 4.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And that's where you predict what life can do in the natural world. And I didn't even know that these were the fundamental life types at the time. The theory predicted it, and then I looked into the taxonomy, and sure enough, these are the main 3 that are organisms. I had left out that one, and taxonomists, have been proposing it for a long time that we need this quasi-organism type, and that's where you get viruses.
Yeah.
Right, you're about done here. Anyway, the rest is getting a little bit more out there anyway. So here I only look at the relation with the ancient philosophy and theologies, and show that it aligns perfectly with what the ancients had talked about and which exists all through Vedanta, and that has also carried through every major religion on earth. You see it in the 5,000-year-old Indus seals. The same patterns represented. Then I goofed around and said, well, if this theory isn't BS, it should say something about the quantum particles, which I pretty much know nothing about. I looked online just as a curiosity. And Fermilab CERN, was saying that the old chart of the periodic table of the quantum particles wasn't very informative, and they came up with a new one, and this is the one they came up with. And I go, damn. Not only is it the exact number of elements, the 2 quadrants, non-local and local, oriented in the exact same way as the Holon, but the properties of each quadrant fit the causal model as well. And the properties of the Higgs boson, which is that it explains the production of mass. And that the photon is explaining the production of energy, all of it. I'm going, what are the odds of that? But obviously, a lot more.
It's obvious.
And then, of course, this is the cosmological model, which, not worth explaining because it's just an advertisement for looking at that. But it implies a space-time model that would be compatible with all of this. And it ends up being an infinite origin. So it's not a beginning of time. Time would be eternal in this model. That's it. Pretty much life, the universe, and everything.
It is, yeah, literally is, yeah. And you know, the five elements from you know, the Chinese, I can't remember the philosophy, but the five elements, you know, they map onto this as well. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I did that with Thomas a little while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, I'm a big fan. There's still things that you know, I don't quite understand completely. I get it. I think in terms of, you know, when we're talking about repair, I think there's probably a different term which is more appropriate.
What's that?
It might, I don't know, it might be, so repair is maintaining the thing, yeah, but it's more than just repair. I think the um what's happening there is you've got the essentially the the sensing, yeah, of the influences, and as a result of that sensing, there's a change on uh, the knowledge of the thing, yeah, um, and
What word would you use?
yeah, because repair is a process which, I don't know, but you've got selection down there, haven't you? Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, see, the thing is,
I'll think about it.
I think you probably already got this
Yeah,
in these Holon types, that the way you get another way to describe why you have four types is to simply rotate the causalities.
yes,
So
that's
they
right.
all
Yeah,
stay in the same order, but
yeah,
when repair is efficient cause, you have the archaea. When
yeah,
metabolism is the efficient cause, you have eukaryotic.
yeah.
Repair
Okay.
is a good term because repair is not fixing the organism. It's only repairing the metabolism component.
Mm,
It's what it says. Okay, I'm going to make a model of this. I'm going to write down what this is so that I don't forget it, and then I'm going to use that model to fix it in case there's
mm,
errors.
mm.
So it's not reproduction; it's repairing the metabolism.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
reproduction is something that would naturally occur in evolution
yeah.
as a elaboration of the repair process.
Okay.
But that's why he didn't want to start off with the evolutionary MR system. He wanted to show that life is more fundamental than evolutionary life.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Have you considered mapping the systems of the viable system model onto the R-Holon?
BSM?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the procedure is in doing that.
yeah. Because you've got the strategic level, which I would imagine is in the external sensing is where your informational events are. Yeah. The operations management is, so I'd put final cause where the strategic level I'd put on the final cause. I'd put the operations level on the formal cause because that's where the organizational constraints are established.
Yeah.
The system level 3, I think, would equate with your efficient cause. System level 2 might fit with metabolism, and then system level 1
Yeah.
might fit in the center
Well,
potentially,
sure.
something like
The
that.
thing is, Gary, that if this is true, which baffles me as well, but if it's true, it can't disagree with anything.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a
And so
universal
the
model.
question isn't how does this map onto VSM or to system dynamics or to other approaches. It's going to be compatible with all of them.
Yes, I
But the
agree.
question is, which is the most general view?
Well, the
Which
R-Holon is
which
the most
one
general.
ring that binds them all?
Yeah, yeah. No,
And I think this is the one ring that binds them all.
I agree. Yes, the R-Holon is the universal model for everything.
Yeah, and people like David Rousseau don't even consider this a GSM.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
How could you not?
Well,
It's the
well,
most
with this,
general thing
I'm
ever
going to stop
proposed.
the recording now.